Kinsey, thank you so much for being here.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course, yeah. So I got um, connected to you through AI Unlocked not too long ago, and upon listening to you, I'm like, oh, I really want to chat with this girl.
Oh my goodness, that just makes me feel so good. Thank you so much for saying that. I'm so glad we've connected.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's so much overlap. Like I said, we're kindred spirits. We're both women in the technology space, but also from the very name of your podcast, I believe, Authentic AI,
Mhm.
you are striving for more mindfulness in that space.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, I don't know how much your audience is start dipping their toes into the AI world, but when you first start, it can be very bro-y, I like to say. So
Yeah,
I like to try to bring some of that feminine energy into this space for sure.
yeah, absolutely. And some levity and humor because I feel like it sounds like such a heavy thing. And when people place photos of what they perceive as AI, there are these androids that are about to replace them. And I emphasize even in my talk that I gave that AI has been around, evolving, expanding, just like us, under the hood for quite some time. And you've been in this space for how long now?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm pretty new to this space. I'm definitely way newer than you are. You told me you were kind of doing that in college, even and stuff. And, I think it's one of those things where I started learning about just kind of hearing about AI tools about a year and a half ago now. And I slowly just started dipping my toes into this world and using them because I really wanted to figure out how I could use them in a way that feels aligned, right? And so I'm fairly new to this space and these tools still. And I think that no matter where you're at in your journey learning about these tools, you can just start and you'll pick it up pretty quickly.
There are so many tools, you're right, and one can kind of move swiftly in that space. Now, marketing in general has, I know the name of your site, Feel Good Social, it just so resonated with my heart. Can you share that connection to authentic AI?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. So I have been an online entrepreneur for over 5 years now, which is pretty crazy. And it kind of started with my brand, Feel Good Social. Now, that brand took a little over a year to finally like hone and figure out, oh, okay, this is it, right? Because I started out, of course, trying to do all the things and trying to figure out what is my angle, what do I believe, all the different stuff. And finally, I figured out Feel Good Social is really where it's at because I want to help down to earth solopreneurs show up online in a way that feels good to you, that is feels aligned and joyful and doesn't waste your time or sell your soul. That's kind of my little tagline. And then I've been growing that brand and podcasts for 5-ish years now, like I said. And then yeah, about a year and a half ago is when I first started hearing about the AI tools. And I'll be honest with you, my first little response to AI tools in general was kind of, I like to say I was a curmudgeon about him because I was totally like grumpy. Like, isn't the internet fake enough as it is? What's this going to do to our creativity and critical thinking skills? And I really wasn't into AI when I first heard about it. And then I kind of had one of those epiphanies where I was like, oh, wait, like the reason I'm not into these tools is because I am afraid of the change that they'll bring and I don't know enough about them, right? So instead of turning away from them, let's turn toward them and get curious and figure out how we can make them work for us, right? And so that's when I created my sister brand and podcast, Authentic AI. And, they kind of go together in a way, Feel Good Social and Authentic AI. It's really about just making your business work for you in a way that aligns with you on that solid foundation that reflects who you truly are. That's actually one of those big lessons that I've learned in entrepreneurship myself. And so yeah, they're what I call sister brands. They're growing together side by side and they're founded in kind of the same values and approach to business and life, I think.
Yeah, and do you have two podcasts then?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. And the feel good aspect also to me means that you're making this conscious alignment, your conscious effort, very intentional on what you choose to do holistically with your life. And then tying that in with marketing and then tying that further, distilling it to now the most current topic in the world of marketing seems to be AI or all worlds. I think anything tech related these days, every aspect of it is touching upon how can we streamline, how can we make things a little more efficient. Now, now let's take a big step back and tell me about your definition or perception of authenticity beyond AI as you think of it in terms of your, I don't know, spirituality, so to speak.
Oh man, wow. I love that question. And it just feels like so big and also like maybe so simple at the same time, right? I think that it's about just accepting who you are and getting curious about who you are, your life, the lessons that you learn, the values that you have, how you show up in the world, what you believe, and accepting yourself for who you are, right? And showing up in that way. And then for me, authenticity, it's like I feel like getting curious about who I am has made it so much easier to show up in my business because I just have to show up. I don't have to worry about pretending to be someone all the time or anything like that. And that's who I am. And that's who I encourage others to be. So I think that my version of authenticity is not the same as your version of authenticity, and that's okay. And like, so for me, all I have to do is show up in my life and be who I am. And then also just encourage people to do that, even though it looks different for both of us. Was that helpful or a good answer?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Because that I was mentioning to you that this month I'm exploring various facets of
Mhm.
what authenticity means to me, and I touched upon that, like going from imperfect or going from perfection to authenticity and accepting yourself,
Mhm.
and that is a hard lesson at any age. Especially like when I was in corporate, I know that a lot of people would say they lost themselves, they lost their souls. It's one of the reasons I
Mm.
wanted to leave corporate and become my own entrepreneur is so that I could express myself more, I would say, authentically.
Yeah. Oh man. I know. Yeah. I think it's like just one of those things that for me, it just became so much easier to like live my life and show up in my business. I was feeling exhausted, feeling like I was trying to look all professional and be all tidy and be someone who I wasn't, you know? And as soon as I just started leaning into who I am, then it all fell into place in a way.
I would say, and I'm sure you've heard the term flow, but maybe there's this concept of flow that is triggered when you are able to just be yourself and be authentic. Now, another step back is in the world of marketing, in which I know that you and I are probably more familiar with, because build a brand, there's a lot of, or build an entrepreneurial brand, there's a lot of marketing that is involved. And one of the first lessons in marketing that I know of is we talk about this concept of avatar and knowing the voice of your customer, knowing your own voice, and really digging deep into understanding their persona. And what's ironic about that is we're really talking about authenticity.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, it almost sounds like it's a spiritual adventure. Like you are going to need to do this as a due diligence. But imagine if you had to now do this and apply it to your AI. So your AI is now authentically representing your brand voice. And that's a bridge, an arc that is esoteric for a lot of people because they may not have done the other stuff, meaning create a brand voice and avatar. And now you're asking me to make this AI thing sound like me.
Mhm.
Maybe simplify this arc, so to speak, for those who are like intimidated by just the concept of AI.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I absolutely nerd out about this sort of thing because I think that AI, like a lot of people, when they start kind of seeing AI stuff. Like some people use AI in a way that I wouldn't recommend, whereas they're using generic prompts with their AI tools and getting generic responses. It's really easy to pick out copy or content that's been written by AI these days. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, and then you see it everywhere, right? And like, and so people get turned off by it because they're like, well, I don't want to turn my brand into a robot, right? And I totally get it. I don't want that for my brand or your brand either. And so I want to encourage people to understand that there is a way that you can use these tools that feels authentic to you. You can use them to boost your productivity without sacrificing your authenticity or the quality of your work. And it's exactly like you said, it's learning how to train your AI assistant to think and sound like you. Like that's a very first step that I recommend people do when using these tools, because then you will get responses that feel like 80 to 90% there for your brand specifically, right? And I do think that you're still going to have to, on the back end, go back in and give it your little human pizzazz, your human touch. But, these tools really can get you so close and sound like you, strategize like you if you train them. So when it comes to training your AI assistant on your brand, oh, I geek out about it because I mean, firstly, like it's not that hard. And even if you don't know everything about your brand, like you just said, not everyone really knows their brand voice or has done their ideal customer profile. Like the cool thing is that training these tools on your brand can actually help you understand your brand better, right? Like working with these tools, it's really fun because then you are kind of honing your brand together and getting those insights. And ChatGPT can work with you in a way that like you might not know, you might not have like the professional insight, you might not have a branding or marketing background, but like working with these tools, ChatGPT can be that person, and then you can bounce ideas around and understand your brand better, right? So when it comes to training ChatGPT and your brand, there's like so many different ways you can do it. Firstly, you can just like brain dump into ChatGPT all about your brand. Just be like, this is my brand. This is who I am. This is what I think I believe. It doesn't even have to be complete sentences. Just tell it things, and that'll already help it understand your brand a little bit better. Or you can go the super nerdy route that I love to go, where I like to really hone what I call like the 4 core strategies of your brand core identity, ideal customers, brand voice and writing style, offer suite, and then messaging. And if you want to deep dive into all that, oh man, you can turn your AI assistant into like your digital mini me. I swear, it's awesome.
It is awesome. And because this is still an evolving and growing niche, even my skill sets are getting fine-tuned over time. And it does require, for a lot of us, even those who are a little savvier, to take a step back and really understand, like, well, who am I? Do I have a voice when I write? I mean, that's one of the things I started to think about because it depends on the context. Sometimes if I'm, say, sending a meaningful letter to a friend, via email, it's going to sound like, hey girl, how's it going? What's going on with this? And going straight into the heart of the topic. Versus if it's like a professional thing, you may have a different persona, so to speak. But it's still authentic because you're going to overall always have the same, I would say, core values.
Mhm.
So I'm glad that you're mentioning that there's the conversational way to train the chat GPT, and then there is the more formal way. And in this case, we're talking about large language models, things that are allowing us to communicate and message. But there's many different types of AIs. The mainstream AI that we hear about more and more last 3 years are, generally speaking, tools like ChatGPT or Meta AI. Um, the next question I have for you is, what concerns do you have about the impact of AI on social engagement? What's really cool about this question is you already have something called feel good social. So I want to see how you've been kind of reflecting on this.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, the impact of AI on social engagement, I think that truly authenticity in your brand is becoming more and more important than ever, right? Like I was just kind of mentioning before, it's so easy to pick out AI written content these days. Once you start seeing it, you're like, I laugh every time I get an email subject line that starts unlock the power of like that is like written by AI, or there's just different tropes and generic things that chat cliches, that AI robots will dish up for you if you don't, aren't aware of them, and if you don't know, or train it on your brand, I mean, and stuff. So, I think it's one of those things where I never want to like discourage people from using AI tools, but I think that we need to be intentional with the way we're using them, because now more than ever, it's really going to differentiate your brand if you're still able to lean into your brand's uniqueness, personality, all the different things. Versus, I've heard from several people in my community, I've heard from a podcast guest before. She's like, I was turned off by several of my favorite brands, like my favorite people who I follow online. All of a sudden, like a year ago, I could tell they started using AI tools, and it was legitimately just like copy pasting, and their content got boring. They're like, it just didn't sound like them. They lost the reason that I followed them and loved them and trusted them. And she's like, I unfollowed them. And it was really heartbreaking because I've been following these people for years with like, and all of a sudden they just like let AI take over their business and lost that, and so I think it's one of those things where it's definitely affecting the world and like the way we show up online and the way people communicate, and just being really thoughtful and intentional, making sure that you are always using these tools in a way that aligns with you, in a way that aligns with your brand, running anything that AI tools generate for you through the filter of your brand. And like, yes, that's the copywriting, but it's also the ideas, right? Like, it's, if it sends you 10 content ideas, think, oh, what's my brand's approach to this? What does my brand think about this? Does my brand align with this? Or is it kind of like not aligned with me? Like doing things like that is going to ensure that you are saving time, doing all the awesome things that I can help you with while still maintaining that authenticity that I think is hugely going to set you apart more and more and more as these tools become more mainstream. Was that helpful for you?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Because I say this all the time that there's a learning curve, there's an evolution. Maybe if you've been like I don't know, a slow adopter, so to speak, and you start using AI, it's not like a one and done deal. It doesn't read your mind. It needs to be trained to some degree, and if you strictly rely on it, you will get very like win-win when the when all those generic like phrases that sometimes
Mhm.
cringe, they're going to be thrown into the mix. And that's the thing about training though. And training it to understand you and your authenticity really is about I don't know, like giving it information and data. Like you can give it, here are the things I don't want you to say. Here are the things that I do want you to say. Here are the quirky things I tend to say that my friends know I say out loud. My favorite thing is when my son was still learning to kind of come up with bigger phrases.
Mhm.
One day he's just chatting with me, he goes, "Well, actually, mommy, that's not how it works." And I'm like, "Whoa, who talks like that?" "Actually, you do."
Oh my gosh, that is so cute. It's so funny. I was literally just before we hopped on here recording a video for one of my course lessons, and it was talking about brand beliefs and opinions. Because actually, funnily enough, this course is training ChatGPT on your brand and stuff. And like, I was saying that, I always like to start with a or with a brain dump myself. I don't necessarily like to go to these tools and be like, write me a social media caption. I don't like to go to these tools and be like, here's my industry, here's my brand, like, what are my brand beliefs and opinions? No, I like to start with my own words, because firstly, that shares my own beliefs with ChatGPT, but also it shares my own language with ChatGPT. So, for example, with Authentic AI, we believe in making AI work for you in a way that aligns with you. We believe in a human first and brand first approach to AI tools. I tell that to ChatGPT as I'm training it on my brand, and it knows then that, okay, this is what my brand believes, but it's the language that I use, right? Could I have said, I believe in authenticity and approachability? Yeah, but like that's not how I speak to my ideal customers about my brand. And just like using your own language and phrasing with these tools allows it to understand that about you and help try to replicate that for you. Like if you don't train it and especially use your own language and like tell it your own thoughts, then it will give you the most generic responses because that's what it knows. But if you tell it something else, it'll know something else, you know?
Absolutely, you're training it and you're feeding off of it. And again, this is kind of interesting. I'm just thinking out loud that just like you're not going to need to expect it to be perfect, and I just finished a podcast on not expecting ourselves to be perfect, like allowing ourselves to be authentic. So this journey, so to speak, on training your AI to be authentic is a journey. It won't be perfect over time, and you're probably going through your own self-discovery through this. Now, I recently had a female friend, and she said, "No, I absolutely would not use AI ever." And then she had that very big brother esoteric vision of the monster AI android out there.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the first thing that occurred to me when I had that conversation was a lot of it's about educating. And I'm making a leap or jump here, but I know you mentioned stats. And I wanted you to kind of enlighten us and educate us about um, maybe any numbers you have, and especially around women, because there seems to be a barrier to entry around jumping in and using this technology.
Oh, yes, lady. Thank you so much for asking. And I'm about to go off. I get so excited when it comes to this stuff. But and I will say that this was first brought to my attention, the idea of women and AI tools by an awesome woman from Australia. Her name's Dr. Nikki Sweeney. And she was sharing how women are 2 times less likely to use the top 50 AI tools than men, right? And it really hit home for me because this is something that I've kind of been realizing, especially as I was having as I've been having more and more conversations with people through my podcast and whatnot, right? Is especially the reason that women are less likely to use AI tools than men. And of course, we know culturally we've been not really accepted in the STEM subjects as much or encouraged, in the science and mathematics. And also, like, women kind of have been told throughout their life they're less techy. I'm not techy. That's something I hear a lot from women, way more than men, right? But also, I still remember the first time someone was interviewing me for their podcast about AI. And I love this woman. And she was like, "So, what do you say to the women who feel guilty about using AI tools?" And I was like, "Oh, this is a thing, like she's like, "Yeah, I feel like if I'm using these tools, I'm cutting corners, I'm not doing the work." And here's the thing, like, women are really more concerned often with authenticity and the way that we show up online, the way we portray ourselves, because we have to be concerned about that. Because if we want to be respected and taken seriously, then we have to be seen as doing the work, right? Which is really interesting because a lot of times with AI tools, for example, if men are using AI tools in the workplace, it's being productive, it's being innovative, it's, cutting edge technology. Whereas if women might be using these tools, I mean, I don't know if this would be like said to their face or if it's just how we feel about it, but we could think we're cutting corners or we could feel guilty for using it, right? And so it's one of those mindset shifts that I think we really need to make as women when it comes to using these tools is okay, yes, I can use these tools and I can use them authentically in a way that aligns with me. I don't have to turn into like a tech bro to use these tools. And it's really important, especially that women start embracing AI tools, because, like I said, at this point, men are 2 times more likely to use AI tools than women. And AI tools can boost your productivity by up to 40%. There's another stat for you, which is like working 2 extra days per week. And if you think about the amount of work you can get done more with AI tools, men are then more likely to get that promotion, to get that raise at work, and the gender income gap will giantly increase instead of us decreasing that, right? And so if we don't start embracing using AI tools and really flip the script for ourselves and be able to use them, then we will fall behind where we want to progress, right?
Absolutely. And you and I were talking about the fact that it's not been around, the stuff that is more mainstream now, like ChatGPT, for that long. It's been evolving, obviously, but in the mainstream world where it's like everyday conversation now, the last 2 or 3 years, so it's not too late. It's there's still time. But what I encourage people to do is start with the human aspect of it. Like typically we start something because we want to avoid pain, right? And you were just talking about avoiding the gap,
Mhm.
avoiding being left behind, or avoid being judged. So start educating, and maybe even I would say reach out to people like you and others who are at the frontier of making it more understandable, making it more accessible. Because I do believe that a lot of women do find it scary. There is fear, but fear can be overcome by understanding.
Mhm. Yes.
So
Yeah,
I
I call them the AI scaries.
AI scaries, I love that.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you kind of coined different terms that we can now it's starting to resonate. It's like people are beginning to relate to the idea that I don't know these things, and sometimes we don't even have a vocabulary yet to articulate what we don't know. But it's
Mhm.
okay to say that and have these conversations, like you were saying. I'm all for your stats, and I will encourage you to share more each time you have anything to share with numbers. Um, so another thing I'd like for you to do is, what concerns do you have about AI in terms of social engagement? How will that change human relationships, if at all?
Yeah, how will AI change human relationships? I mean, I think that it's just something that societally and culturally we all need to be starting to be aware of, and realize like, okay, what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. I think that really leaning into human touch and human conversations in your business, in your life when you can, is great. A lot of times people will say, use AI tools in the spots that don't necessarily need the human touch quite as much, to then make more space for the human touch and engagement areas, right? Which I think is great. Like I save time in my business now, and it allows me to go onto Instagram and reply to comments more often, or like leave comments on other people's posts more often. It allows me to host 2 podcasts where I like get to have conversations with other humans now, because like AI is taking care of a lot of other back end stuff on my business and helping me to do other things like more quickly that would have just like been me not like interacting with other people, right? So I think it's one of those things where like yes, we can allow AI tools to make our quality of communication worse within our community, within our society. But do we have to? Like, no. And I think, again, it's really like coming down to, I always like to encourage people to sit with themselves and think, how do I want to use these tools in my business, and be intentional, or in my life as well, too, be intentional with the way that you want to show up in the world and in your business, and make sure that you're using these tools in a way that aligns aligns with that. So I have still to this day never copy pasted a caption from ChatGPT into a social media post, because I want to make sure that I'm always like adding my human touch, my Kinseyness to it in that way. You know, through training ChatGPT, I have gotten very close at this point, like to where it almost can get me perfectly, but it still can't. But that's okay. I still use it because it helps me get 80% there, and then I can go add my little Kinseyness to it. Oh my gosh, do you want me to share like a few more stats? Because I'll be honest, like statistics is like I hate statistics. I had like this really creepy professor in college for statistics, and like it just doesn't work with my brain. But actually, since like using ChatGPT, I've had it help me figure out some statistics, and that like is helpful. So I actually crunch the numbers of how much time I realistically save with AI tools. And I say realistically because a lot of people, I don't know if you've seen the bro brands online that are like, create 30 days of content in 30 seconds. You know, like the people who are like, have using numbers to like make false promises about how much time you're going to save with ChatGPT. I'm like, no, let's like crunch the numbers realistically of like, okay, I love writing. I'm a slow writer. I always have been. I labor over every word, right? So it used to take me an hour ish to write an Instagram caption. Let's be honest, because I'd be like, oh, this has to be perfect. You know, with ChatGPT, it now can take me like 15 minutes usually to write an Instagram caption because I tell ChatGPT what I want. It dishes something back to me. I edit it. And like that's saving 45 minutes there. You know, it used to take me like 6 hours to edit one podcast episode audio only. Now with AI tools, it can take me 2 hours to edit an entire podcast episode, plus schedule it out, plus write the show notes, plus create social media clips, like all this stuff. That's saving me 4 hours. It's crazy, right? So like when I crunched the numbers, I found out that on average, I'm saving 3 hours a day, 15 hours a week, and 70 hours a month with AI tools now. And it's not like miraculous stuff, you know, but it all adds up. And a lot of times too, the stuff that really adds up is like using it not just for like a task, like using it for writing a social media caption or like do my podcast, you know, it's more so pushing past those pain points, those pressure points, those blocks that happen on a daily basis in your business, right? So remembering that that adds up too. Whereas maybe you're just like working along in your day, you're typing out an email and you're like, I don't know how to finish this email. So then you go to ChatGPT and have it finish the email for you, right? Whereas before I would have wasted another 30 minutes trying to think of that word I'm trying to think of, you know? Or like I was creating my sales page for one of my programs on my website and I wanted to add a countdown timer. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to go down like a Squarespace tech forum. I hate trying to find my answer to like a tech problem on a forum. But instead, I went to ChatGPT and it helped me within 2 minutes. I created that countdown timer using coding from ChatGPT. And like, it's just like those things all add up and save you time as well. Right. So it's really crazy how much time you can save with these tools without it like being some miracle solution for everything, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My productivity, and I need to do that due diligence of understanding how much time I have saved.
Mhm.
But I know for sure, like you're a podcaster, you realize that, and if you're like me, which sounds like very similar in terms of just belaboring the details of the copy you're writing, I
Mhm.
spend so much time on my podcast title. And then a year after my podcast had been out, I started learning more about SEO and keywords around podcast titles. So I went back and changed all the titles. Then it was like another year later, I learned about here's a formula to make it even better. So I
Mhm.
adjusted. And then now I give this formula to ChatGPT on
Mhm.
the key traits of a good title, and then adding my own flavor, Shilpaism, so to speak. And it'll give me like 7 titles typically, and I pick one and I zero
Mhm.
in on it. And then you add your own fine tuning to it. So absolutely, these daily tasks have really been what I call streamlined. That's a theme for my podcast next month, is really about how technology can help us streamline. Because at the end of the day, it's never been about writing an email. It's never about those things. We want to live our purpose, our why. I mean, I want to spend more time with my boy, that I want to spend more time at the gym or at home getting fit. And so it's not about, oh, am I going to make the perfect title? Well, what if you can streamline most parts of your life?
Yeah, it all adds up. And exactly what you just said, it's not about expecting one perfect thing from ChatGPT. It's not about getting your AI assistants or tools to do the work for you. It's about working with them, right? And like going back and forth and like not and just like allowing them to help you along in your day, to help you along in that product, boost that productivity, and not just like thinking it's going to do it all for you. Like that shift myself has been so helpful and really does like help to add up. And exactly what you said, like it's not just about boosting your productivity and seeing success. It's about finding a little wiggle room behind the scenes to enjoy your life.
Absolutely. And it could be down to fine tuning a particular tool like ChatGPT and training it. And it could also be about incorporating as many tools as you think needed. Now, as a podcaster, like I have Descript open, which is a way to help me with things that normally took 3 hours. Now I can do in 1 hour.
That's my favorite video editing software too. That's what I use. Yeah.
So there's so much out there, and I'm still learning. But again, that's keeping it real, that no one can truly be an expert. We weren't born with it. Well, maybe one day. We weren't born with an AI chip in our head knowing exactly how to do things. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, maybe one day. I mean, that's one of
Well,
those where you're like the grimace emoji, like it's so real.
yeah, we don't want to scare others by saying that. I sort of came out as a joke though. But yeah, I feel like what you're doing though is truly helping. Now, maybe you can share one more thing about how people can find you and the services you provide and who your target audience is, so that they can take this to the next level.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I would love to connect with anyone who's interested. I do have two podcasts, like you said, Authentic AI for entrepreneurs or Feel Good Social. If you search for those on any of the platforms, you'll find them. My Authentic AI website is actually DIY with .ai, and that's where you'll find all the things. And yeah, I have, if you're interested in content creation, one of my favorite free resources that I have is called the Reels Prompt Playbook for ChatGPT. It's dishing up lots of Reels AI prompts for captions and hooks for your Reels and whatnot. Or actually, next week I'm releasing our newest course, Brand Blueprint for ChatGPT. So that's what I was just working on earlier, but it's helping you get super nerdy and training AI on your brand. And I'm really excited to release it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I look forward to sharing those details in the show notes, and hopefully you can come back and we can go deeper into one or two topics that I feel like they resonate with this journey that we're both on. Um, and then, yeah, take it from there. Kinsey, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
It was so much fun. Thank you so much. Well, have a great day, and until next time, because I hope you say yes to another interview.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah.